Let's hop on here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for clicking on. This is the way the news is done in 2024, the actual information, non agenda news. So thanks for clicking on. Hit the subscribe, like, and share. And we're going to be covering the um, press conference, a crucial press conference for President Joe Biden following the conclusion of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. And it was originally scheduled for 5:30. The White House moved it back to 6:30. The White House press corps, the people normally that you see normally peppering the press secretary with questions, will be addressing questions to the um, current president of the United States. Now, I say it's a critical press conference because there's a lot of pressure on Joe Biden to step aside from the nomination for the next 4 years, not from the office for the next 9 months. Um, and well, let me just show you. Let me just show you something here real quick to kind of start things off tonight. Again, thanks for being here. We will go to CNN to start out. Powerful Democrats furious Biden's decline was hidden. So that's why this tonight's press conference is so critical to the Biden administration and the Biden campaign because the money's drying up. The They're probably not going to tell you this on legacy TV, but the money's drying up. The big donors, and that's the powerful force in any political party. The big donor money is drying up, and I told you that last week that it's starting to go to the Senate races and the House races to try to bolster those. Because the big donors don't think Biden can beat Trump. They are, and again, they're angry because the decline was hidden. I don't think they should be angry. I've been pointing it out on here. Um, the and they covered it by saying, "Oh, these are just these are cut clips. Some of them are, yeah, but there are too many things that we noticed with our own eyes. It's just like people trying to tell us January 6th was a tourist event. We sit here and watched it, and we are in a contentious place as a nation. President Biden scheduled in 25 minutes for a press conference, and I've got some other things I want to talk about before we get to that time period when he is going to be beginning to speak. Um, I mentioned in last night's episode, if you did not watch it, go back and watch it. One of the things I mentioned in last night's episode was something to look for in Monday when the Republican National Convention starts. I discussed Trump possibly doing something incredibly outside the box, such as picking a family member to be vice president or picking a non-political person, even a non-MAGA political person, Mike Flynn. And if you go back and watch the episode, it kind of ties all of it together with a couple of MAGA guys discussing how Mike Flynn is actually, um, I don't even, he's the son. I know what it was. He's the son of Joseph Kennedy Jr. Now, Joseph Kennedy was John F. Kennedy's older brother who was killed in World War II. I'm not sure what the MAGA Q obsession with the Kennedys really is, but it's bizarre to say the least. And there's an example of it in last night's episode. Anyway, I mentioned that that's something to watch for. Because Trump has not selected a vice president yet. Normally, it's done well before the convention. Um, and I mentioned again, he could pick someone with the last name Trump, or he could pick somebody outside the box. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth now for just a couple of seconds. All right. The reason he does not want to pick a political person is Mike Pence was his vice president last time, and they wanted to hang Mike Pence in front of the Capitol. And the reason being, Mike Pence stayed loyal to the Constitution and to the democracy and not loyal to Trump. So Trump needs somebody loyal. And I also said last night that if if Trump um, were to attempt to abolish the Constitution and appoint, create a dictatorship, that there would not be an age requirement for vice president, and he would select Barron Trump to be the successor in the line of dictatorship. Um, that becomes even more possible if he does. The one thing I didn't mention last night, but I should have, and I had it written down, I just neglected to say it, is he does something that has never been done, and that is not select a vice president at all. Just so, just accept the coronation of the Republican Party's nomination without naming a vice president. If he does that, then I would say that's a pretty good indication that Barron Trump is going to be an 18-year-old next vice president of the United States should Donald Trump be elected. Now, before you get all bent out of shape, calling me crazy and things like that, let's look at this real quick. Can someone run for the presidency of the United States without a running mate and pick a vice president after he's elected? Now, this person's assuming that the president is going to be a him. So, yes, someone can declare themselves a candidate for president without picking a partner for vice president. Of course, we know that. Nothing in the Constitution says you have to pick a vice president. And he also says, no major party would support a candidate which didn't allow them to pick a running mate. So the odds of getting elected would be bad. Just another of the many write-in candidates who get no mention in the news or history books. It's never been done before. But does that mean it's not going to happen? No, we have to quit. We have to understand that what rules there are not the rules there that used to be. The way things have always been done are obviously not the way things are being done now, including this Heritage Foundation that we've got some more information on. But okay, I'm going to hold on to that for a second. Yeah, I want to hold that for a second. Here's the one I'm looking for. All right. Again, we got about 20 minutes before President Biden's press conference is to begin. I'm covering a few other things in the meantime. Hello, not going away. Thank you for being here. Hi, Shelly G. He would never do that. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. If the plan is to install him as a dictator, he's going to start doing whatever he wants, regardless of protocol or political party, until he's stopped. I'm just saying. I think we're seeing the start of that. I hope I'm wrong. Again, thank you for being here. All right. Let's start with yesterday. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introduced articles of impeachment against Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Um, this is important, incredibly important, especially with what we're talking about now, with the idea that Trump is going to completely dominate the Republican Party and create a fascist dictatorial um, regime. If if um, if that is if that becomes obvious, then we'll find out who the Republicans are in Congress and who the MAGA is. Um, Again, this this cannot go anywhere without Republican votes. This article of impeachment can't go anywhere without Republican votes. So, in order for this to move towards democracy, some Republicans will have to get behind it. Now, are there? Um, Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Wait. I'm at the wrong page. Hang with me here for just a second. I hit the wrong button. I got us off script. Um, I get us way off script. We got 17 minutes until the Biden press conference. Um, this is where I was wanting to be. Um, Geez, some of the stuff that's going on, I'll tell you. All right, this is something I want to. This is something I want to share with you, and I say it's going to be important who the Republicans are that care about democracy, and who the Trumpers are that only care about propping up this Project 2025 and making Trump basically a king. And Chris, who'll be with us tomorrow night, will be on tomorrow night, probably around 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Chris reminded me that, when he watched last night's episode and reminded me that what I said is not crazy at all, because it's exactly what every third world country dictator does, is immediately install their siblings or some relative as next in line, and because they don't trust anybody there, anybody outside of the family is going to potentially be disloyal. Representative Daryl Issa, Mike Kaufman. This is a list of Congress people, and when they signed up for the Heritage Foundation, and we got a whole list of who everyone is, and more importantly, while every congressperson that is in the Heritage Foundation roll call here, not every Republican is in this list. Okay, that's crucial. While every member of this list is a Republican member of Congress, not every Republican member of Congress is in this list. Our democracy is in a very tenuous situation, and it's going to come down to loyal Republicans, such as Mike Pence was. A couple of other things here. Of course, with all the attention that mainstream media is giving to the connection between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Um, Hold on a second. What? Oh, the mainstream media is not giving any attention to the connections between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. So they probably won't be giving a lot of attention to the connection between Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein. Just, something to think about here, as we are 14 minutes away from the news conference, the much anticipated news conference where Biden is supposedly going to show um, the world at the end of this NATO session. He's going to show the world that he is indeed fit for duty for the next 4 years. Now, speaking of fit for duty, um, the Los Angeles Times says there is one candidate not fit for duty, and it's not Biden. The Los Angeles Times editorial board calls Trump unfit for office, saying, quote, Trump is the only man in the presidential race manifestly unworthy of holding a position of power and has no business ever returning to the White House. And if that's not enough, this is from the New York Times. The New York Times editorial board has declared Donald Trump unfit to lead the United States. All of this as we get closer to our press conference that we are we are all here for. And again, just in case, I'm telling you, don't be surprised if something incredibly outrageous happens at the vice presidential position, um, because they indeed wanted to hang Mike Pence, and I don't think Trump's going to trust J.D. Vance or Tiny Marco Rubio or uh, who was the other one? The guy, the governor from North Dakota. Like, oh come on, who are you trying to fool? He's got something in mind that is going to shock everybody, I think, and except for the Doofy crew, those of us part of this channel, it's just like when all this stuff started coming up about Biden, the whole world started going, ah! And we were all like, yeah, well, we knew this was coming. Um, Again, there was. I talked about this list of Republican Congress people connected to the Heritage Foundation and specifically Project 2025. Um, this list is only out here because there was a massive hack of the Heritage Foundation, and including in that hack was some conversations. This is the guy. His name is Mike Howell. This is Mike Howell right here, and let's see. Here's that conversation. Part of that conversation. Um, he asks, "Would you like to meet virtually or send an emissary to meet in person?" And the hacker said, "I would like to be left alone without my rights being threatened." Mike Howell says, "Are you aware that you won't be able to wear a furry tiger costume when you're getting pounded in the ass in the federal prison I put you in next year?" Um, the hacker said, "Such unprofessional language from an executive director. Would you mind if I share this? Please share widely. I hope the word spreads as fast as STDs do in your degenerate furry community." Um, and it is the gay furries that have hacked the Heritage Foundation. And um, another part of this, basically, before the segment I just read, this Mike Howell guy uh, called the hacker out and threatened him, and obviously threatened prison, etc. But um, it just made me think, this guy's really wanting confrontation. Um, and I wanted to show one more little segment of this. How much time we got? We got 9 minutes. Okay, let me see if I can find the. Uh, here we go. This is the one I want to show. We want to make a message and shine light on who exactly supports the Heritage Foundation. Surprise, surprise, China. We don't want anything more than that, not money and not fame. We're strongly against Project 2025 and everything the Heritage Foundation stands for. Mike Howell says, that's why you hacked us? Just for that? The hacker says, yes. It should be obvious that's all we want based on our history as a hacktivist group. We don't seek money. Um, Keep in mind, if these people wanted your money, you know, it's all online. Mike House says, okay, listen to me closely. We are in the process of identifying and outing members of your group. Reputations and lives will be destroyed. Closeted furries will be presented to the world for the degenerative perverts they are. For those that don't know what a furry is, there are people that like to have sex in costumes, like animal costumes from the furry thing. Um, he says you cannot hide your means are minuscule compared to mine. Okay, this is a rich and powerful man, is what he's trying to portray. You can either turn yourself in or you can cooperate. Um, and this guy, I don't know. I all I could hear in the back of my head was Doc Holliday from Tombstone coming out saying, um, "I'll be your Huckleberry." And this guy's really, angry. And I thought, okay, who is this guy? Well, um, let's go here. Um, Gay furry hackers feud with Heritage Foundation exec, and this is Mike Howell right here. He says he's a columnist, but yet he's executive director of the Heritage Foundation. Um, and while we're here, let's just pop here for just a second, see what his LinkedIn looks like. If it's public, it may not be public anymore. There he is, executive director of the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation, um, hmm, based in Washington D.C. And he's wanting somebody to call him out, um, or he wants to confront somebody. And the first thing that went through my head was Anarchy Princess or Joe Flood or somebody like that that just um, decides to make his life absolutely freaking miserable. Somebody's going to step up to that task, I have a feeling, as this story evolves. Um, we shall see. We shall see. And again, we got 5 minutes until the press conference is allegedly to begin. Um, and again, the hack, so much information coming out of the hack, including Project 2025 authors, all listed here below, and their role in the Trump administration, since he didn't know anything about it or who's behind it. Um, the chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management, the White House Assistant Special Counsel, acting assistant secretary for policy at the Department of Labor, deputy associate attorney general, chief of staff to the director of the National Intelligence, the Federal Communications Commissioner, the Human and Urban Development Secretary, the Associate Director of President. You get the idea. Um, and sadly, um, too many people are either not paying attention or don't care, and they're voting only because they hate gay people, black people, and women. Um, Secret Service had been notified yesterday as Alex Jones hosted a show with Assassinate Biden in the title. And again, I talked about this last night, the danger of such an act, as it is what the white supremacists do. It's called a call for a lone wolf. They try to put it in somebody's head to do this act, and that they will be celebrated for it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's incredibly dangerous. And I'm glad the Secret Service is aware. One final, hold on, I skipped right past it. One final little tidbit here again. Elon Musk wanting to meet up for kung fu practice. That's slang. And then the final segment here, and we will cut over to the debate. This is, okay, hold on. Let me center it. Thanks for being here, everybody. This collection of data started in mid-February of 2023, and this pie chart is based on data from February 2023 until January 2024, limited only to the United States. The 76.7% column is Republican. The 11.7% column is Democrat. The 10% is unknown. And this small sliver is self-declared libertarians. And these are the numbers from that time period for total offenders who's actually committing sex crimes against children. And I don't know how we can keep just keep pretending all these things aren't real, that all this isn't happening. Again, here's JD Vance from earlier interviewing saying he believes Trump's sexual assault accuser, and that stuff's going to come out. So he's not going to be vice president. Trump is not going to trust a politician. I'm just saying. I think that is the situation. So enough about that. Now, will the Democrats stand behind Biden? That's the question of the moment. And I'm trying to find the link on AP here. Associated Press, not Anarchy Princess. Because I had it up, and of course everything reset if you don't do it fast enough. Why are we not seeing it? Hang with me, please. I will have it. I had it all queued up, and now it's not letting me even click. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. And whoever's messaging me, I'm busy at the moment. Thank you if you're watching. All right, we've got it. Again, thanks for hanging with me. Thanks for watching. Here is unedited coverage from the Associated Press and from the American Doofus channel on the Joe Biden press conference. Feel free to sing along. Oh. No, I am going to I'm going to turn my microphone off once this gets started, because I'll be tempted to interrupt a lot. I have a feeling. And I don't think to anyone's surprise, we are not starting on time. Okay, since we haven't started yet, I want to switch over here to this again, real quick. Um, Former First Lady Michelle Obama, the only Democrat running ahead of former President Donald Trump in a hypothetical matchup, massively ahead, 50 to 39. Biden at 40 to 40 with Trump. Kamala Harris 1 point behind. Gavin Newsom 3 back. And this is a Reuters poll from about 10 days ago. And we are back here with the. I hope I edited all that right. Okay, it says we've lost screen share. Let's try it again. There we go. We are showing. Okay, that's getting annoying to me. All the O's. So I'll pop over here and say, Papa Weepin, peace and blessings to you as well. Peace, love, and sunshine. Hello. Thank you for being there. Telescope. Um, yeah, right. It's happening. The Germans didn't feel that way about Nazism, too. Right. And it's because they got enough people to hate the Jews that they didn't pay attention to anything else. It's the same motive, only with um, the white boys of White Boy Summer um, expressing hate against anybody that's not one of the white boys of summer. Let's just speculate that that is a possibility. And again, we are waiting on Joe Biden press conference. The the more delayed it is, the more suspicious and questionable everything becomes. Again, it's already been delayed an hour. Originally supposed to be at 5:30. Um, and I think I've covered everything that I had up to cover as far as filling time. So we will sit patiently here. 5 minutes have passed already. If again, they know how critical this is, and they know that if things don't go really, really well, I mean, really, really well, um, there's not going to be anything left except waiting until after. Now, nothing's going to happen until um, nothing's going to happen until after um, the Republican convention. Okay, let me just put that out there. There's not going to be a decision this weekend of Biden right before the Republican convention. It's not going to happen. They're going to wait and see what the Republicans do, what happens there. If there is indeed violence and chaos, and it totally changes how people are going to look at things, and how people are going to look at the Republican Party, and as well the Democratic Party. Um, and they've already played through their filler soundtrack and are restarting it. So, not missing anything. Let's talk about me, says Henry. It's time for the next generation to take over, Peace, Love, and Sunshine says. Um, I would not disagree with that at all. Um, I mentioned the Reuters poll that had Michelle Obama winning with 50% to 39%. Um, and that hasn't been talked about, doesn't isn't talked about. Now the thing about that is if Michelle's the nominee, Barack is her number one advisor, and he's already been president of the United States for 8 years. Everybody in the world knows him. Um, People are comfortable with him, and everybody except the MAGA. So see, it's not gonna energize the right any more than they already are. The far right MAGA extremists. You're going to notice that too. Messaging, you know, how things are framed is important. The way words are put together is important, especially in politics. And you're going to start hearing the extreme MAGA Republicans because there's a door being opened for the non-extreme MAGA Republicans to do what's right for the country, and that wording is going to be coming, and it's going to be it's serious, and it's crucial that somebody starts thinking about these things because all the Biden campaign has been doing primarily is smoke screening, is trying to convince convince us that what we see on an everyday basis is not real, and it's just somebody trying to make him look the absolute worst. Let me say that he's gotten us this far, and I didn't think he'd last a year. And I said that on the show when he was elected. I said he's not going to be president for a year. We're going to have Kamala Harris. What are you people doing? He lasted longer than I thought he would. Maybe he's got another 4 years in him. Um, if he ends up being the nominee, then and Trump does half of what I think he's going to do at this convention, um, things are going to change, and Biden's poll numbers are going to climb after a Republican convention, because I think it was I don't remember who said it. Somebody said if Trump does this, it's an automatic loss because the people won't accept it, and I agree. That doesn't mean he's not going to do it. He's not the most political savvy crayon in the box. He's just the orangest one. Um, Being late is not a good look. You're right, peace, love, and sunshine. And we're looking at 9 minutes late, 10 minutes late. It's um, it's really not a good look. And let's pop back over there. I'm hearing it in my earphones. I don't think it's coming out over the stream, but I'm hearing repeatedly. Uh oh, oh oh, oh oh, oh oh, oh. Yeah, and it just ended again. Let's see. Um, and here comes the music again. We are in a hold pattern, as anybody that's ever produced live events will recognize that term. We're in a hold pattern. That means the talent, the whatever it may be, in this case, content is currently not available, but is expected soon. So don't um, don't cut your feed. Just make sure you can fill. That's how live radio and live television used to work back in the day, and that's how live streaming works now. You got to be able to fill, and I don't have enough stuff. Actually, I started too early. I guess I should have started at quarter till 6 instead. But thank y'all for hanging out, and we will have it. I'm hoping we'll have the press conference when it begins. We are 11 minutes late. Uh, Henry, what do you want to talk about? What do you think, Henry? We'll talk about you here for a moment, since in the chat you said let's talk about me. You think Henry? Do you think the country is on a potential precipice, as I say it is, that we are at a crucial time? I don't know. Maybe you're not even in here anymore, Henry, because this thing is. I don't know. This is bad. Okay, we changed the music anyway. Let's see if this is an introductory thing. Or if we just. Nope. Just they got tired of playing that thing over and over and over, so we've got another song. Well, if this is the plan to convince America that Joe Biden's the man, I hope something hasn't happened to him, honestly, because that's always a fear. Um, I hope something hasn't happened to him, as far as a major medical condition. But if it hasn't, and they're just they're jerking people around. Let me tell you something. Again, I told you that we're in a holding pattern, and producers hate these. They like things that run on schedule. They run on time. And what happens is they get fed up, and instead of okay, right now we're coming up on 15 minutes late. If let me do this. Let me get back on here and talk to you all for just a moment. Um, Here's how this works. All right. Biden, let's say Biden would have had 10 million people watching at 6:30 when this was supposed to start. Okay. We had, I don't know what let's say we had 20 people on here watching at 6:30 when this was supposed to start. When it doesn't start when it's supposed to, when something doesn't happen when it's supposed to, people lose attention and go away. So I'm not talking about my channel. I'm talking about the Biden campaign, what this does to the Biden campaign. Perception matters. And the fact that he is still not on that podium conducting a press conference 15 minutes after it was scheduled when it was already delayed an hour, that tells CBS, NBC, anybody that was going to potentially break in to their regular programming to carry this press conference, if they would have done that, they would have lost 15 minutes of programming, 15 minutes of advertising dollars. Those things matter. And the views are going to matter now. I'm going to come out and say they were anticipating 15 million people watching this press conference. Okay. 51 million people watched the debate, according to CNN, and 5 million people watched the ABC News interview that we tried to show on here. I'm going to say by the time this begins, 3 million people, maybe 3 million people will watch. So 12 million people, just automatically assuming that uh, everything that has been said about this guy is true. Everybody is assuming that because that's what they're showing us. They're showing us that this guy's not dependable. This guy's not dependable. And they're showing us in the absolute clearest form by first moving it from 5:30 to 6:30 and now from 6:30 to 6:45. This is not what I wanted. I had it all set up so at 6:30 we go boom, so that as soon as it's over, I don't have to talk about all the other news. I can just talk about what happened in this press conference and how I'm surprised Biden performed better than I thought he would. And, maybe there is a chance that if he is the nominee, people will get behind him. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel that way anymore. I'm sorry. I wish I did. Um, but for too long, I've been on this program saying America deserves better than either one of these two guys. Repeatedly, I even launched a 10-minute presidential campaign with the Fish Party, FISH, for food and internet and safety and health, the four fundamentals that we should base our nation on, and not upon. Oh, wait a minute! Wait a minute! Wait a minute! We've either got a change in music, or here we go. Here we go. Did I get this? Here we go. I'll be back shortly. I don't know. Personally, this doesn't make me feel any better. This just shows me his staff might be even more inept than him. They're just now staging. They're just now deciding where the American flag should be. Username 24. Yes, they are all like this. However, you don't see it on the stream. You don't see it when the conference is supposed to begin. When they announce a press conference starts at 6:30 after delaying it at 5:30, this should have been set up at 5 o'clock. Sorry, I'm done making excuses for these clowns. They better get their shit together or America's going down the tubes. Sorry, I apologize for that. But doesn't mean it isn't true. I'm getting off here for a moment. Be back. Yeah, username 24. I have too. I've seen the same thing for Trump pressers. But Trump's not fighting for his political life. I don't think in my personal opinion, this is not how you fix doubts. And I was hoping for some doubts would be fixed. Username, it's not just the debate. It's not just the debate. It's every public appearance Biden has had. I don't want it to be this way. I don't want Trump as a king. And a matter of fact, we might have to have a different channel coming up here soon. Start organizing some things because I do not want Trump as a king. I got kids and grandkids, and here we go. We got a new backing track. Yes, it will. Yes, one of the main things they're going to go after is the 19th Amendment, which guarantees women the right to vote. and that's the way it should be. Username 24. Unfortunately, you're not the only person that votes. We should all vote on policy, not personality. But the unfortunate truth is, the majority of the electorate in the United States is incredibly naive about anything to do with policy. And all they vote on is personality. And what is being shown to them right now is the proof of the ineptness that had been claimed and will continue to be claimed. And I'm not picking on anything. I apologize if it comes across that way, username 24. Um, I'm just pointing things out. Tommy Temper, uh, yeah, he has. Uh, this is there better be a really good excuse for this. Um, actually, username 24. Everybody that no, the the people that normally watch the show know that since January of last year, I've been telling everybody that behind the scenes they're working to replace Joe Biden. Um, so the media just caught on, and it's been going on behind the scenes for a while because he is unfortunately deteriorating, which is what happens to people, uh, a lot of people when they get in their 80s. Um, and while the majority of people might have seen it, might see it as media driven, since media is what drew their attention to it. Once the actual um, senators and Congress people start coming out and saying it's time, it's time. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have listened to the politicians when they said it's time and resigned, we would have never got Amy Coney Barrett. That's part of how we got to where we are. And your opinion does matter here, username. I'm not discounting it. While I may be countering it, and maybe in a passionate way, it is not with malice. I'm just incredibly frustrated at at the situation this country is in, and whatever happens in this country will impact Canada, will impact Mexico, it will impact Europe, it will impact the world. Oh, okay. That's even better. Come on. It's 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Want to rock. Get a belly full of beer. Not really. Uh, I don't know. I honestly, I'm trying to envision in my head what Biden can come out and do that is going to make everybody um, forget that this is um, this is over a half hour late after already being delayed for an hour. Lori Arnold, uh, I get a little excitable when it comes to politics. Yes, I can. but it's never with malice. Um, it's just with incredible concern for this country because I got grandbabies. I got 4 grandbabies now. You know, um, and some of the stuff in one of the things one of the things in particular in this project 2025 thing, one of these things in particular is that every public school kid will have to take the military entrance exam, mandatory. Every public school kid, no private school kid will be allowed to take the exam. As part of the schooling. If they do it on their own, that's okay. They can't do it formally. Um, this is a definite have and have not. And if you think you're part of the haves, you might be sadly mistaken. I'm just saying. And the plan is unlimited war, unlimited as far as time, because we are a military industrial complex based economy, and our export is war. And I don't. I'm not saying that if Biden or and I say bring back the Obamas. Bring back the Obamas. They weren't part of the Epstein stuff. Keep the frickin' Clintons away from anything to do with power. Keep the frickin' Trumps away from anything to do with power. Bring back the Obamas for 8 years, and let's see if we can't right this ship to back where it was back when they were in the White House. I'm the only one in America saying that, but eventually, I think people might start to. And as far as her saying she has no interest in running, I don't blame her. I wouldn't want the job either. The country needs them. I never thought I'd say that because I was on the ticket with Obama when he ran. When I was the congressional candidate in this district uh, when Obama won, and I was promised a job. And the day after the elections, that phone number was disconnected that I was told to call to get a job. So I've got no. This is not about. I'm an Obama fan. No, this is I know politics. I've been um, educated into how politics really work. I don't care if you believe it or not. I've experienced it, and I have no love in any way, shape, or form for the Obamas. I make this statement simply for the good of the country and one of the only options I can see for a future. Why? Well, the Obamas would bring a little bit of stability, and they would bring confidence in people voting in down ballots. Um, Now, eh, maybe Trump comes out in this convention, and I'm not going to be surprised. I've actually called for it. Maybe Trump comes out in this Republican convention, and it's just so batshit crazy that uh, the whole country's like, no, no, we're not doing any of that. You know, in which case, um, we're in a better place than we are right at this moment. But right at this moment, if I were um, the um, the game master or whatever it's called that um, my play would be to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris step down and Michelle Michelle Obama run. And again, she said she has no interest in it. Nobody's going to have any interest in it publicly, but for the good of the country, it might be the only option. And if you got better ones, you let me know. Please let me know. In the meantime, we're coming up here on 40 minutes um, waiting for this press conference, and I'm going to take a 3-minute break. I had several breaks scheduled before now, and I'll be back in 3 to 5 minutes here. Um, and hopefully this. Hey, wait a minute. Are we? Tommy, that's a great question. It's one of the asinine things that the White House did. Both uh, did it twice, called it the big boy press conference, and it just it's asinine the way that things are being handled. And I know I'm not the only one that sees it, but we'll see how this plays out. Okay, I got to mute here. Somebody's coming up. It sounds like. I'll be back. Oakley. Ugh. Oh my gosh. We're not going to have a gladiator contest. Oh my. Well, uh, keep chatting, chat. Um, I thought this was going to start, but we are officially 45 minutes late. Oh, and again, this is, as we've said, um, the end of the NATO conference, which has been held here in D.C. Um, referred to by two different White House spokespeople without solicitation as a big boy press conference, as Tommy Temper pointed out. Um, and thus far, he hadn't, maybe he hadn't woken up from his big boy nap. I don't know. When you set yourself up for failure, um, oh, hang on. Hang on. All right. I think I'm on. I don't know. Can you all hear me? No. All right. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you all. Um, all right. Now we're going to have a military march, high school band day. Um, at some point, we will, we are expecting anyway, a press conference, originally 5:30, then 6:30, and now it looks like probably 7:30. Um, but at least they have the American flags lined up the way they want them, and the podium and monitors with the monitors in the stands and the teleprompter at the top. Uh, Never liked using teleprompters, but sometimes you don't have a choice, especially when you're um, doing something inside a news studio. For Biden to be this late, something big be happening. Um, you know, that is indeed, that's a possibility. There's a crisis somewhere in the world, and that's more important than being here. Um, but outside of that, just perception matters, and the perception has been that of incompetence in how the White House uh, press has been handled, um, incompetence in how the president has been scheduled, and and the big donors are tired of it. The big donors are the ones that are going to make the difference, and they are they're off of the vote. Um, I got to get rid of that. The music's just too much for me at this point in time. We will keep monitoring, and if indeed something happens, um, at the moment, reporters are just standing up and telling people why there's no press conference going on. Um, there we go. Get that as low as possible. Oh, um, 40,000 infrastructure jobs, roads in Wisconsin never been better. That's the message that needs to get out, Max. That is a message that needs to get out. Um, I was saying yesterday that, you know, when I was walking Oakley, uh, the thought came to me that how beautiful it's pouring down rain here at the moment. But yesterday, about the time we walked, it was sunny and 78 and a nice breeze. And it just felt so calm and peaceful, and like, you know, um, we can't be on the precipice of a major catastrophic swing in our way of life, but we indeed are. Dinner's almost ready. What's for dinner? Peace, love, and sunshine. I have not eaten, and could use it. Uh, Lori Arnold, better get started before it gets too late and Biden's brain shuts down fully. That happens to me at times too. Um, just saying. But, you know, I I lost a sister recently, um, and we saw the decline over the years. You know, the from you can't drive anymore because she would drive and not remember where she was going, or worse, how to get home. And and then more and more things were noticeable, and until it was a point where she didn't know who I was. And I take that perspective, that personal perspective, when I look at this situation with Joe Biden. And I don't want somebody potentially in power that, when a crucial decision has to be made, doesn't know the person he's talking to. And it's a concern. And you probably would not have heard that had the Biden administration been competent and started this press conference. But nonetheless, there you go. He's been a good president. He's been a lot better president than I thought. Um, but I have real concerns, and um, plus I know the guy, and you know, um, he's not without faults. He's not without flaws. I'm just going to say that, and not bring any more else into it at the moment. Um, Rate Biden a B plus president, Obama and Clinton A plus and A. Okay. Under Trump, my 401k went to 201,000, but now it's back and then some. Awesome. A lot of things have gone up. Yeah, I'm. If it wasn't by the grace of God, I still wouldn't be here. It seems like something happens, and I'm able to go another month, which is kind of crazy, but it's a blessing. Do you think Biden is really making any decisions himself? My joke would be he chooses between chocolate and vanilla pudding. Um, but actually, I think he probably is. Um, but I think for the most part, it is people telling him what he needs to think and what he needs to do, and telling him repeatedly if necessary. Um, but there are probably some decisions he actually um, still makes as far as policy, etc. Um, it's such a I mean it's such a massive responsibility if you take it seriously, and don't just work 3 hours a day. Um, but at the same time, you have to have dependable people around you because even my favorite president of all time, Jeb Bartlett will go down in history as my favorite president. And even he um, could not know everything, despite everything that he did know. And if you don't know who Jeb Bartlett is, um, he is the president in the TV show West Wing. And with that being said, here comes the President of the United States.
This year's NATO summit, the consensus among the members was it was a great success. So especially momentous because it represented the 75th year, the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. But this time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance, and it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5. He's already told Putin, and I quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said. It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said. But I made it clear, a strong NATO is essential to American security. And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I would remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, is the world safer with NATO? Are you safer? Is your family safer? I believe the American people know the answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to three other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down. Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares. Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office. Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive, and I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Jeff Mason.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
Vice President
Number one.
Trump?
The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million jobs. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down. And so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, Putin. I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is, well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was. Next one, Nancy Cordes. CBS.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years. Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you stay in the race, despite the concerns that voters say they have, and you lose to someone who you yourself have argued is unfit to return to the Oval Office?
Well, look, I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started. As you recall, understand initiatives that I put forward. Can't do that. It's going to cause inflation. Things are going to skyrocket. The debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plan so far and what's going to happen in the future if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now? And so we got more to do, though. We got to finish the job. And by the way, I come from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. I'm not anti-corporate, but corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. Doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase in corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And guess what? We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better. Everybody does better. And we talk about how, for example, remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry was in the United States. And former presidents decided that the best way to do it is find the cheapest labor in the world, send the product over there and import what the product was. And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember going to South Korea, convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories. And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment in computer chip manufacturing just coming in the bean. None of you thought that would happen. None of you thought that would happen. But it's happening. It's happening. And it's going to grow economies. All through, and by the way, red states and blue states. Matter of fact, there's as much in red states as in blue states. I've made no distinction. So my generic point is that the idea that we can't continue to build and grow the economy, make it fair. And like I said, from my standpoint, when the middle class does well, that's when the whole economy grows. The poor have a shot, the wealthy do well, but the wealthy got to start paying their taxes.
As a follow-up, sir, you mentioned that your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes and her accomplishments over the last 4 years that make her ready to serve on day one if necessary?
First of all, the way she's handled the issue of freedom of women's bodies, to have control of their bodies. Secondly, her ability to handle almost any issue on the board. This was a hell of a prosecutor. She was a first-rate person, and in the Senate, she was really good. I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that. She is qualified to be president. That's why I picked her. Felicia Schwartz, Financial Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting the fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing. And I have, I don't know how many, don't hold me to it, roughly 20 major events, some of them with thousands of people showing up. And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just got to just pace myself a little more, pace myself. And the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, that's what it was about. That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff, but they add things all the time. At the very end, I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway, I'm sorry, Zeke Miller, Associated Press.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions for you. First, on the NATO summit, President Zelensky, in your meeting with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons, saying that, in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war unless those limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And then secondly, following up on Felicia's question there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that. How can you reassure the American people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia. We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term and the near abroad into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not. If he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The question is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has, and the weaponry we're getting to him? I've gotten a more long-range capacity, as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or it's a matter of foreign policy?
Well, I tell you what, the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done? Can you name me somebody who's gotten more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years? I created 2,000 jobs just last week. So if I slow down, I can't get the job done. That's a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. But there's no indication of that yet. None. Who we got here? Merrick, Pulaski Radio.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm well.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
And yourself was warning just 2 minutes ago about it. So my question is, do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
Well, look, I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. It'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point. And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe. That worries Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. And you may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO. I remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, et cetera. And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine, because you're going to get the NATOization of Finland. And about 4 weeks later, I got a call. No, that's not true. Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me? Because in my office, and I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes. I beg your pardon? And so Finland joined NATO, 800-mile border is a significant, and they were already allies, but they weren't part of NATO. And you heard, I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall what he said in public in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't mind being repeated. He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our interest because of the joint ability to be together to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly in Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion. But it expanded, and we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50. And we're able to bring about a coalition of Europe and Asia, Japan and South Korea. I just we talked about AUKUS, and we talked about the relationship between Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, the United States. We're making the world safer and stronger because we have to deal with the new arrangement that exists in the world. The Cold War is over. The post-war era is over. What is going to replace it? And I respectfully suggest I have a pretty good idea what that should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it, and we're just going to get stronger. David Sanger. Where's it?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Be nice, David.
Mr. President, the NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. That's part of a broader partnership that seems to have cemented in place in the past 2 or 3 years. I think one that you were a little bit doubtful of when we asked you about it some time ago. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia, and whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question, that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Well, the first part of the question is, we discussed and I raised in the NATO summit, and others raised, the future of China's involvement, what they're going to do, what they're doing with Russia in terms of accommodating, facilitating. They're getting access to additional. They're not supplying weapons themselves. They're supplying mechanisms for them to be able to get weapons. And China's position is basically, and I've spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has, over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through, for real. And by the way, I handed all my notes. But my point is that Xi believes that China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from Europe to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we have to make clear. China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where we've reestablished direct contact with China after that. Remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end? Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems. The issue is that we have to make sure that Xi understands there's a price to pay for undercutting both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia and dealing with Ukraine. And so for example, if you want to invest in China, as you know this area really well, want to invest in China, you have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you do by their rules. and you don't have the authority, and you have to provide all access to all the data and information you have. There was a while there, as you recall, the last administration and other administrations, where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in because they had access to over 1 billion people in a market, not 1 billion, but a lot of people in the market. And so they were doing it. But that got curtailed when we started saying we're going to play by the same rules. For example, the idea they don't abide by the international rules related to subsidizing products by the government funding. So guess what? They're not going to be able to export their electric vehicles to the United States without a significant tariff. Others are doing the same thing around the world. But it is a concern. It is a concern that you have both China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, countries that are not necessarily coordinated in the past, looking to figure out how they can have impact.
Do you interrupt that impact?
Yes, I do, but I'm not prepared to talk about the detail of it in public. And I think you'll see that some of our European friends are going to be curtailing their investment in Russia. In China, as long as China continues to have this indirect help to Russia in terms of being able to help their economy as well as help them in as a consequence of that their ability to fight in Ukraine. The other thing that we talked a lot about is that, and I raised it, and I didn't hear any. I can't swear that everyone agreed because not everyone got to talk about it. But we need a new industrial policy in the West. For example, we talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity, has to be able to generate their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to, it came as a surprise to some of us how we had fallen behind in the West in terms of the ability to construct new material, new weaponry, new everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things that came out of this was we're going to be meeting again with a number of my colleagues, my European colleagues, is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems. Not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same, that's what Russia's trying to figure out. That they went to China and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to be all defensive weapons. That was a decision as well. I'm ready to deal with them years from now. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem. First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think that Russia had 17.3% of of Ukraine that they've conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory. They've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage and loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military, killed or wounded. They have over 1 million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they are very good at controlling and running the public outcry that relates to how they use mechanisms to communicate with people. They lie like hell through the constituencies. They lie like hell about what's going on. And so the idea that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia in the near term is not likely. But one thing for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it, read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv. It wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is. And anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space. That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me because they're not sure where this all goes. And look what's happened in Asia. We have strengthened the Asian Pacific area more than anyone else has. We just put together with today. I asked our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia. And I met twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down China's reach. But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly. Assam from NPR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asma Khalid, NPR. I have two questions. This airplane between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in 2020, and there was a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders. I want to understand what changed.
Two things. Let's go back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with al-Sisi in Egypt. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard. And Israel occasionally was less than cooperative, number one. The Israeli War Cabinet, I've been dealing with Israel since Golda Meir. I've saw some of the reporters around here covering all the time have heard me say this. The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me. That's how far back I go. I know Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able to be done in terms of the plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations to particularly from Egypt all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli forces staying in Gaza. The question has been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be, the end of the day after has to be no occupation by Israel on the Gaza Strip, as well as the ability for us to get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I've put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port reattached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But that's why when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden. There's no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got bin Laden, we should have moved on, because it was not no one's ever going to unite that country. I've been over every inch of that, not every inch, the entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same mistake we made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company. And all this criticism about I wouldn't provide when the weapons they needed. I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles. I was able to unite the Arab nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. Doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas. And if you notice, you know better than most, there is a growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. And so there's a lot of moving parts. I just have to keep moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire, and get those. And by the way, look at the numbers in Israel. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
Bridge candidacy in 2020. You referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders. And I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth. Most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that to get major pieces of legislation passed. And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did and we just moved things along, anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do two more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats in the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about whether how the next week or two goes would inform your...
Am I using that way you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out. For the longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, where people are already there. And here, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters. I forget exactly how many. I want to cite a number and then find out I'm off. But we have scores of headquarters in all the toss-up states. We're organized. We're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish and how we can't afford to lose what we've done or backslide on civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights. There's that little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea we're sitting around, this where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around. More children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promise the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still, and I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy is not an issue. Democracy is not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams. And you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. and they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember with the staff, I said, I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see if we can expand it. You know, the only thing age does is help you with it. It creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention. And so the point I'm making is, I think it's important that if the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't hidden a thing. You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it. But no one's suggesting that to me now. And I'll ask you another question. No matter what I did, no one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they want, but I get overwhelming support. Overwhelming support. I won, I forget how many votes I won in the primary. Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says, we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. It's not going to happen.
Even if that means they vote for someone else?
Sure. Look, I'll end this with this. I served in the Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the top if they can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started, in terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think that, running with Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff. Are these days voters, me versus Trump, where I win all the time. When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes. The bottom line is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started. I mean, it hadn't started in earnest yet. Most of the time, it doesn't start till after September, after Labor Day. So a lot can happen. But I think I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern. And I think I'm the best qualified to win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too. But it's awful start from scratch. And, you know, we talk about, you know, money raised. We're not doing bad, doing well. So.
Yes. You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that. Mr. President, okay.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody. This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, those that have hung out and stuck around. It's going to be time to hear what you have to think after all of that. Before that, I want to pop something up here real quick. He's saying that there are no polls that are showing that. In every one of the battleground states, Trump is beating Biden. On average, it is average is 75 to 43, and again, nationally heads up 47-43. So the polls the polls are there now. How much do the polls mean? Well, that is in and of itself a completely different story. One other thing I want to mention is his habit of saying, oh, anyway, he starts a list and then he says, anyway. And what that subconsciously does is it repeatedly says, well, I don't think what I have to say is really that important, so I'm going to not say it and move on. It was one other thing. He should have called on Fox. He should have called on Fox first, and instead of snubbing them. If you're going to fight, and then he shouldn't have got all blah, 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 guns and, you know, he shouldn't have done that, but it showed some passion anyway. I'm going to say one more thing. As far as his performance overall, better than I expected. Do I think this does anything to the poll numbers? I really don't. Coming right out of the bat and saying Vice President Trump, and as soon as that happened, who didn't know that Trump is going to be watching this and hop all over that? And it's not that big a deal. It's not, you know, that's not going to swing the polls in any way, shape, or form. Outside of that, there were some slip ups, which are going to happen. It's live. Um, he was better than I anticipated him being personally, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes from here. So let me run back up into the chat, run back up towards the top of the chat here, and see what everybody's been saying. All right. Well, I apologize. My computer's running slow. Tommy Temper was saying, hang on. He just reversed 100% what he just said. I think I remember that, what you're talking about, where he made a statement and then almost in the next breath or shortly thereafter said the exact opposite of what he had just said. Um, total flip. Yeah. Um, he might have come across as rambling, but when you're talking about things on a when you're talking about things that you have to get into depth in order to totally explain, it can come off as rambling. um China's reach. Yeah, he has not. That, there, obviously I showed you the poll thing. There are some other things he said in there that I was like, oh, come on now, you haven't done that. You just, yeah, I mean, you just haven't done that. One thing is job creation. Let's talk about that for a second, because technically he has not created any jobs. All right. The president doesn't create jobs. However, by certain programs such as infrastructure, jobs become created through the money invested by the federal government. So he does get to take credit for programs like that, and justifiably so, because they wouldn't be there otherwise. Um, but he has not China's reach. He has not. He has not um, countered or cornered or whatever term he used for China. Um, China's economy's struggling, and a major bank in China just went bankrupt, just went belly up, um, which is causing some panic. Meanwhile, our stock market is at the highest it's pretty much ever been. And yet we should be prepared, because there are other countries that are coming after us, as we've talked about on here. But that's not what this is about. This is about Biden tonight. He has not countered China's reach. I've talked on this program, showed you the past couple of nights that the China Navy is all the way from um, Philippines to the the outer coasts of Japan in the Pacific Ocean. They're flexing their muscles. Hopefully, that's all it is. But it's not um, China. No, China is not been checked. Um, I believe this is from Telescope. This is kind of crazy. Telly's in here. Echo Romeo's in here. Lori Arnold's in here. Tommy Temper. A lot of old names that it's good to see. I believe it's time for our leaders to be honest. Wealth inequality is wider than the French Revolution. No, Trump won't fix the problem. No, he won't. He will make it worse. Yes, we do have a strong economy, relatively speaking, but it the entire economy is based on credit. Okay, it's like a washing machine. The spin cycle. In order for it to keep working, it's got to keep spinning in the spin cycle. If it doesn't, the tub doesn't spin, it it's not functioning. Hang on just a minute. Melvis, I'm still on live, man. All right. I'll talk to you soon. my friend Melvis, he likes to come over here because his wife likes for him to get out of the house. Don't tell him I told you that. So, not to sound like Joe Biden, but where was I? Yes, we have a strong economy, but it is based on the the cycle of credit, the cycle of constantly being able to, in order for most people to buy, they've got to have credit to buy big things. And in order to stimulate the economy, you want big things sold. And then you got people making big things, and you got to make sure the people that make those big things get paid enough money to be able to buy those big things. And that's something that is not happening. Okay, and why Biden keeps talking about labor and talking about expanding unionization is because too many times the people that build the things can't afford to buy the things, and that's just not a motivating factor. And then you get the Project 2025 thing that comes out and says that um, abolish all unions. Now the cops aren't going to like that, but it says abolish all unions and no overtime pay. That you work and you do what the hell the master says. And the more stuff that comes out about this 2025 thing, the more dangerous a potential Trump administration is going to be, and the more lenient, therefore, those that oppose a Trump administration are going to be in accepting Biden. All right. If they were running against Mitt Romney right now, if Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee, there's no way Joe Biden would be there. And it just wouldn't happen, in my opinion. All right. How about the $230 million pier that fell apart? Yeah, they put that pier up there to supposedly bring aid in out off the Gaza shore. A storm came along and blew it all apart. They put it back together again, and I think they used it maybe 21 days, and then they disassembled it and took it back to Cyprus to be used at another time somewhere else. So that doesn't it doesn't instill confidence in the military thinking inside the Biden White House. I wouldn't say. Uh, let's see who else. Jim Nagrin. China built a naval base in the Bahamas. Trump just turned a blind eye to it. Yeah, China's really expanded in the Caribbean, and they're also going to be expanding into Mexico. Both China and Russia are going to be expanding into Mexico. Would you go back 2,000 years and save up $10,000 a day or have $330 billion? $330 billion is a boatload of money. And you would probably have to go back 10,000 years and save $10 or 10,000 years and save $10,000 a day to get to $330 billion, because that's how much money that is. We keep consuming and destroying more forests and land and even draining lakes to build, not to mention they are still doing mountaintop removal. Very good point. Very, very good point. Answer the question, Joe. Tomorrow it's going to change. What's going to change? Tax those that create jobs. People become wealthy because of incentive. Without incentive, there's no reason to get into business. Tommy, there's a difference between becoming wealthy through, there's a difference between wealth and greed. Let's just throw that out there as an option to consider. Is there a difference between wealth and greed? I propose my theory is there is a difference. Telescope says I don't think billionaires should exist at all. Yeah. I think there ought to be some kind of cap on that. No individual should have as much power as some individuals have over 99% of us. I think that's a thought that would be shared by most rational thinking people. You guys think president reforms the tax code? That's the Congress. Yes, it is. Unless Trump becomes, if Trump gets voted in and does what he says and becomes a dictator on day one, Trump will control the tax code. It's called lobbying and not bribery for a reason. Yes, because bribery is illegal and lobbying is an essential way to make sure Congress people are bought and paid for. We vote for the party and not the person anymore. The Democratic Party demonstrated it during the last election. The last two elections, to be honest, going back 20 and going back to 2016, the Democratic Party basically determined the candidates, because in both times it should have been Bernie Sanders, and everybody thinks Bernie's a communist and all this kind of stuff. Bernie believes in putting people over greed, and Bernie's a Second Amendment guy, and I ran my campaign based on the same values that I share, that people ought to always come first. Especially if you're a Christian, because that's one of Jesus's main teachings. Now, at the same time, I ran against Mike Pence, and Mike was a darling of the NRA. Mike never shot a gun. Mike never owned a gun. And I've owned guns all my life, and I enjoy going to a shooting range. And I used to be these things called turkey shoots around here. But it wasn't about the candidate or the beliefs. It was about the party. So the power of the parties, or the disinfluence of a party, sadly, is the way our country functions. And while it is sad that it functions that way, it's so much better than having one person decide everything. We've been there. We fought a revolution. We didn't. I wasn't there fighting the revolution, but our country was founded in war and in revolution. And again, we are a nation of our greatest export is war, because our economy is based on the military industrial complex. I don't believe Joe changed the direction of the Democratic Party at all during his reign. I don't know if I don't think Joe did anything to move anything in the Democratic Party. Joe's a moderate. Bernie is left to center. Yeah, I agree with that. Joe's a moderate. Bernie's left to center. I'm right of center. Yeah. See, everybody thinks there's a major difference between American leftists or those that are deemed leftist, or those that are labeled leftists, and European leftists. All right, the leftists in European terms, it's a totally different philosophy politically. Um, this country is controlled by a handful of billionaires. It's worse now than J.P. Morgan's time. I would not poo-poo that idea at all. I don't want Trump to win, but he will if Biden keeps running. As it stands right now, I totally agree with that. However, as I've been saying, this Republican convention coming up next week is going to be incredibly telling. I think we're going to see some things revealed. I also fear that it's going to be incredibly violent. Again, the convention center is right directly across the street from the park. The park, that's where all the demonstrators and counter protesters are going to be. How many? I think you're going to be amazed. The buzz I'm hearing behind the scenes, it's going to be massive. The number of people that are coming to show Donald Trump that they dissent. And then across the street, you're not going to have your average Republicans who would have a problem with the protesters right across the street. You're going to have a convention of MAGA. And Wisconsin is a Second Amendment open carry state. Will the counter protesters and the kids across the street in the park, will they be armed? I'd say probably not. At least not with guns. Will they be surrounded on all sides by pro-MAGA militia? I certainly hope not, but I can definitely see that happening. The 1968 Chicago convention, Democratic convention, Democrats having their convention in Chicago again this year, was incredibly violent. It was violent on the convention floor. CBS News reporter almost got knocked out, got punched right in the face. It was insane. And I think it is no longer going to be the most absurd convention of recent time. I think that's going to be replaced maybe twice over by both parties this year. It's just things are lining up, and if you happen to know somebody that's going to be heading up there, heads on a swivel, be super careful, because there's going to be so much attention drawn on this, and there are too many whack job people out there that want to be famous. So, yeah. The creepy whisper. Thank you, Shelly G. I did not write that down, but it jumped out at me. And I haven't, it's not something I've noticed except since the debate, that, and it's not going to happen. It's almost like, I don't know. It's creepy. I didn't like Clinton, but I loved Obama, said Black Eyed Pea. No poll says that. I'm not sure I don't remember exactly what that was about. Whether he has dementia or not, he is just being plain delusional. I got to say, I've got personal stories about Bill and Hillary, and I'm not going to get into them tonight. but at some point, if I'm reminded, I will. I'll spill some tea. I planned on writing a book, but nobody reads books anymore, and there's some things people. I'm not gonna say anything nobody doesn't already know. Just reaffirm things that people do know. Um, it's because he loses his thought and will get mixed up. Yeah, he does, and I do too. Um, but I'm not trying to run the free world. And one thing Biden should not have said, he stepped into it. He said, and he did the creepy whisper voice thing in it. He said that there had been numerous other incumbents that had. I hope I'm still on. Somebody might messaging me saying I'm not on. Okay, no. Hang on just a second. Let me respond to this real quick. I'm still live. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Now, again, I've lost my place. I don't remember where I was at. Oh, yeah, I do. He was talking about, he was using the creepy voice and talking about how incumbents were behind in the past. And why is my camera constantly blurring on me? I don't have enough light, I bet. Anyway, sorry about it. Let me see if I can fix it. Usually if I wave in front of it, it'll dang it. You can't see me, John Cena. He was talking about how incumbents in the past had overcome being behind in the polls to win. It happened a long time ago. It wasn't Jimmy Carter. It wasn't George H.W. Bush. Neither one of whom were able to overcome deficits like this, and neither one of whom were 81 or 82 at the time. So there we go. Camera's finally working. I'm just going to freeze. I'm not going to move. Okay, Shelly G says if Trump doesn't vote out strong and completely distant, if he doesn't come out strong and completely distance himself from the heritage group, I really think Trump will lose. That would be great, except the first thing Republican delegates see when they enter the convention hall that is already prepped is "Welcome to the convention, sponsored by the Heritage Group." Yeah, we showed earlier Peace, Love, and Sunshine Project 25, the 2025 is indeed Trump, and over 140 of the people involved in the 900-page document were higher ups in the Trump administration. Trump doesn't have any principles except staying out of prison. Yeah, that's the main reason he's running for office. He can't put any distance between himself and heritage. I totally agree with that. However, they can start a violent uprising. There is a violent wing of the MAGA movement. The stand back, stand by, and if that is to happen, the question becomes: what percentage of the United States military is loyal to the Constitution and the president? And what percentage of LEOs, local enforcement officers, state police, county sheriffs, city police, who's loyal to Trump? And That's a risk I hope we never have to take, but it's one I'm afraid we draw closer to each and every day. 40-year-old man killed by Hyatt security guards. I remember that story. Ant doesn't have values, and he's too narcissistic. He's a destroyer. He will only destroy himself in the process. I'm assuming that's defender of ants, and just by the analysis there, which I concur with. I guess ants. I don't know. I wasn't. Was Ant in the chat or talking about Ant earlier when I was doing the other stories? I missed that part. Well, okay, here we come. Coming up on the 3-hour mark, and y'all are still here, and I greatly appreciate it. I thank you. Coming up on the 9 p.m. mark as well. So, got some time left tonight. Do something fun. Get away from politics and the thought of it's the end of the world as we know it. Take a break from all that. Peace, love, and sunshine. It's a great name. It's what you need right now. You need peace, you need love, you need sunshine. I did see that she made ribs. All that did was make me want ribs. Of course, Lori Arnold, thank you for everything. She's going to be live coming up a couple of days this weekend. We'll talk more about that tomorrow night when Chris is here. Depending how it goes, I'm going to be either broadcasting or recording the concert in the park tomorrow night, and I'm going to start that around 6, and then Chris will be with us around 10 for this show. So it may be the only thing on tomorrow night live. There may be some music. I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. Thank you again for being here. Please hit the like. If you're not a subscriber, please consider doing so. And if you want to help support the channel, the Cash App is $American Doofus, all one word. God bless each and every one of you that accept those blessings, and with the exception of pedophiles and pedophile supporters. And may God have mercy on the United States of America. It's a dark world. Try to be a light. Thank you for being here. Love y'all sincerely, like chocolate chip cookies. See you tomorrow night.